All right, well, hi everyone. Thank you for coming to our last Tuesday talk and really our last live event at the gallery from the three of us. I don't know what the future of the gallery is, but this will be our last event. And I'm really happy to have you all here, and of course, very happy to have Habib and Heather here on our last event. And I'm gonna hand it over to them, and I wanna thank you all for all these years of support and coming to the gallery, and it's been fantastic, so thank you all. All right, guys, take it away.
Hello, how's everyone doing tonight? All right, I want to thank the guests that's here, online and in person at the JKC Gallery in Trenton, New Jersey. Give it up for yourselves. And I don't know where to start at, Heather. This is our last show here. This is just, I don't know. Me and Heather, we started this show a while ago.
Tell the real story on the last day.
Real story on the last day.
Doing shots at Mill Hill.
Yeah. So we're doing shots at Mill Hill tonight. And we're just talking. We're talking photography and the different mediums and how we wanted to make a platform just to show the different photographers that we initially knew in the area of Trenton. And we all know what happened during 2020, the pandemic, and it became something larger than what we originally planned for it to be or what we thought it could be. And we definitely want to give a big special shout out and thank you to Michael Dalton, definitely.
My pleasure.
I could go on and on about the past guests that we had, but we have two special guests tonight that we want to talk about. And without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to Heather.
Awesome. So Habib and I have chosen to have Jackie Neale, who you can wave, Jackie. Everyone can see you. She's on Zoom from New York City. And we have Mel Evans next to me here in the gallery. Both of these artists we chose, we think we can have a pretty interesting conversation tonight. On voting day, of course. But both of these artists, at times their work can be rather political. And we also like them because not only are they fine artists, but they are commercial artists as well. So Mel has a background in photojournalism. Jackie has a background in editorialism and does a lot of environmental portraits. So they'll both talk about their professional backgrounds in that regard. But in addition, they are fine artists and they both work in analog processes and alternative processes. So you can see that Jackie has some cyanotypes behind her. And we have in the gallery a special treat, an 11 by 14 view camera and a ton of Mel's work, including like 11 by 14 negatives and some of his prints and platinum palladium work. So we'll have a really nice show tonight. I will let them speak more about their work. Mel is going to go first, and then Jackie, and then as you all know, we'll take the Q&A at the very end. So please, the guests that are at home, if you could leave your comments and questions in the chat box during the event, and you guys in person can ask in person at the end. So we'll save our questions for the very end. And I guess we'll go ahead and get started if you're ready.
I'm ready.
All right, let's do it.
So I think my first reaction to photography was, as a child, I grew up in a small town outside of Baltimore, Sparrows Point, which was basically a company town. It was owned by Bethlehem Steel, and my whole family worked at Bethlehem Steel. At the height, it was probably the largest steel manufacturing in the world, maybe 30,000 employees. So the point is, my grandfather, when I was maybe 7 or 8, said I could play with his Hawkeye, a Kodak Hawkeye, a Brownie Hawkeye. And so it had maybe 8 frames left on it or something like that. And I immediately went up and down the street and lifted the hoods on all our neighbors' cars and photographed the engines. And so when he got the film back, he was like, "What is this?" You know? And so fast forward, I was in the service and started becoming a little more serious about black and white photography. And I got out of the service and went to school. And my second year in school, I applied for a job at a local newspaper and was hired. And I think I was hired because I could actually write a caption. But, and that was it. I dropped out of school, went to work at a newspaper, and just never looked back. And I just retired in 2017 after almost 20 years at the Associated Press. And worked at it, maybe half a dozen newspapers before that, bouncing around. But had always been a staff photographer, and kind of, even when it switched to digital, I had kind of always had a dark room, and it just seemed natural. And because I spent my first 10 years in black and white, I guess the DNA is there. And so when it all unwound, and I still do digital work, I have little contracts with universities and stuff like that, but I'm more and more doing black and white as much as I can. And so I brought a selection of slides of a folder of work, and brought a few digital pictures, but mostly black and white. And the slides are sort of more or less my choices over from 1972 on. So if you want to look at them, let's
Yes.
let's see how this works. So let's try it this way first. So let's,
Share your screen.
yep, hold on, sorry. Share my screen is at the bottom.
Hit record.
Got it.
There you go.
Sorry about that, folks. Here we go.
Perfect.
So these start out in 1972, a couple of them. And then this is just a composite of photojournalism from early, mid-70s. Now they just go on through the 70s. And I think if anyone has a question, just feel free to answer. It's James Michener when he was writing the Chesapeake. These are dancing girls at the state fair. This is in Iowa. It's a hearing for a farm being repossessed. This is a guy. This is in Nebraska. It's a tire shop. He's doing his books. I think that every photographer should have a flat iron picture. And that's my flat iron picture.
I don't have one yet. Oh, we gotta go on a trip.
It's always got around it.
So everybody thinks this is really a fun picture, and they like it. Sorry, but you see how deep that water is?
Yeah.
I wasn't prepared for rain.
Oh, no.
This is a more recent work in the last 3 or 4 years. The same thing, just the last same time period. This is I'm not sure why it's jumping around, but this is Katrina. I spent a month in New Orleans, like the second day on. It's 4th of July. This is Lorenzo's here in Trenton that's now gone. I think there's a print of it here too. This is an interesting, I mean, I like the picture a lot, but it's also a physical question in that you can't see that man, and it's kind of hard to explain, but you can't see that man when those two men are talking. And long glass shoots around things. It's really kind of weird. I mean, there can be something in front of you and it'll be gone if you use a really long enough lens. And that's probably 300 2.8. And it was the first time I really realized that. Somebody, oh yeah, of course it does that. You know, I'm like, really?
It's interesting.
It's a more recent picture. That's a fairly recent picture. I was still at the AP when I shot that, but what happened there? Oh boy. So let's go down here. Sorry. This is Hurricane Irene. That's a pretty, it's Tiger Woods and it's following. This is after the, and this, so this is a digital image. I went for work to shoot this picture at the shore, and I took my 8x10 with me. It's 11x14 contact print. The negative is here if anybody wants to look at it. Same thing, 11x14 contact print. This is my niece, and she, the camera's, pretty rudimentary. So I focused, and she didn't understand, and she moved.
Oh.
And so it's just not quite as. This is much sharper.
That looks pretty sharp.
It's got a more dreamy look to it, but the fact of the matter is, it's just not quite sharp. This is a platinum of a barn in Vermont. It's just a couple years old. And I've printed it on different paper. This is a more common paper, and the paper I use, that there are examples in here, are parchment. Someone gave me about 300 sheets of parchment because they weren't going to print anymore on parchment. And sure enough, it feels just like your diploma, but it kind of warms things. It's got a yellow base to it. And this is a tile cutter on break. It's an 8x10 platinum print. And this is a little story. It's the first jazz funeral after Katrina, and it's for a guy named Austin. He was a chef, and he was evacuated and died after he was evacuated. And so they did this jazz funeral. And when I was down there, I photographed it. They walk for blocks and blocks. Maybe it's Austin Lewis. Folks, that was pretty fast. If anybody'd want to see any pictures again, I'd be happy to show them again.
Do you want to look at show some of the prints or the negatives?
Well, certainly these.
Oh, here. Why don't you stop share? And let me remove the spotlight there. And put it on here. There we go. Yeah. What do you want me to show?
So this woman is a student at Rutgers, and she won some really large award. And because she's Chinese and undocumented, they were threatening not to give her the award. And it was it took a while for the school to get it straightened out, but she wound up getting the award. And so we've seen this one. We've seen that one. So let's see. Maybe it's and these 8x10s are a project that I kind of worked on, this small group of pictures. There are maybe 7 missions on the mission trail outside of San Antonio, and everybody knows the Alamo, but there are another 5 at least. And so I was doing the NBA playoffs in San Antonio, and we're back and forth, and so on a day off, I just took the rental car and flew up to this top one and made my way down and just visited them kind of as fast as I could, and didn't really pay much attention to the Alamo because everybody knows the Alamo, and if I ever wanted to finish it, I'd have to go back and probably photograph the Alamo just to be fair, but they're beautiful, every one of them, and actually the others are much prettier than the Alamo, but the Alamo, everybody knows it, and so. And this, probably in 1973, I was out with some friends and happened to run across this gravestone, and I went flying back home on my bicycle and told my roommates, I said, "Where's my camera? I found America." And so I photographed it a couple times over the years. It's gone now. You can't see it very clearly, but there was a crack in it, and eventually, I don't think it was really vandalism, but it just cracked and fell over. This is 11 by 14 negative.
And just so
Yeah.
you can see, you brought your friend along here.
Yeah, that's
Deered off.
that's 28 pounds without a lens. So it's kind of, I always attribute to Ansel Adams, but I don't know though, but the joke was if it's more than 1,500 feet from the road, it's not a picture.
It's funny. Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
All right, Jackie. Whenever you feel ready, you're welcome to share your screen.
Okay. Hi, everybody. My name's Jackie Neale. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. My name's Jackie Neale. I'm a New York and Philadelphia based photographic artist. I'm also a professor and an author and director and producer. For my personal work, I focus on historical, traditional, digital, and experimental processes. So what I'm going to present to you tonight is just a bit of like a trajectory from my commercial to my artistic work. So I'll start. Somehow I just got nervous again. So
You're doing fine.
thank you. I'm sure I am, but I just like sort of get a little bit in my head for a second. I just want to chill out a little. Whew. Okay. Let me just take a breath here. So sorry. I lost the video panel just really quickly.
Yeah, we're looking at your sort of splash screen right now.
Oh, sorry. I just must have shared the wrong. Thank you for saying that and doing a check-in. God knows that I like teach on Zoom and I should know all this backwards and forwards. So, okay. Anyway, so as I mentioned, I'm a photographic artist, and I have worked on a series of work that is independent of my commercial work. But where I am professing is as a photographer, imaging director, and producer. I worked for 16 years at the Metropolitan Museum of Art as a senior digital imaging specialist and photographer, and I worked for the online features department. What I just kind of want to show you quickly is just the basis as to why much of how I work now is influenced by like witnessing the impact of episodic features, like the work that I did with my production team at the Met, where we created these large series in numbers of like 100. And this was like a wonderful experience in educating the public on the Met's collection, but it also was like essentially qualitative data to the importance of the collection itself. So simultaneously, I was always doing my personal work. And so this type of method that we used while I was working there really sank in. So just to give you an idea of the work that I did while I was at the Met, it included the timeline of art history, online features, Met publications, and connections. And this is kind of what they looked like. So the timeline of our history was began when I started to work there in 2001. We began publishing in phases, and then the whole entire timeline of our history from prehistory to modern day was finally published in whole in 2005. And then from 2005 until 2016, we were adding new contemporary works and new essays that were written by conservators and curators and scholars. And then we branched out into online features and created these online features like 82nd and 5th, the Artist Project, and Connections, One Met Many Worlds. And this is some of the work that I worked on in photography and digital imaging. So you can see it was intense in the amount of work that was done. It was always published every week. And as I said, they were always in a series of 100 or more. So the Artist Project was 125 blue chip artists speaking about an artwork that was representative to them, or it was meaningful to them in the collection. 82nd and 5th, we talked to curators, conservators, librarians about their most important, I'm sorry, we're talking about connections here. This is talking about what inspires them in the Met's collection. And then, so then we moved on to MetCollects, where we actually talked about the artwork that was recently collected by the Met and why it was important to be collected and housed at the Met. This is actually one of the most beautiful bodies of work that I ever saw. Irving Penn's Small Trades, platinum, palladium prints that were so incredibly beautiful. And then 82nd and 5th, and this was all curators talking about one piece that they absolutely loved in the Met's collection. And I got to photograph each one of the curators for this. The Artist Project, I photographed 110 blue chip artists for the Artist Project. So you can see that this is how I'm starting to really value imagery with audio. I hope you'll go online and you'll actually visit these websites. They still are up. They're really educational in purpose, to really like entice people to learn the story of each artist or curator, or the importance of a conservator, but most importantly, to appreciate the collection worldwide. So this is the work that is essentially living in the back of my brain. As a commercial photographer, I'm an editorial photographer. I do editorial portraiture, as Heather said, environmental portraiture. So this is just a little bit of that work. Let me know if I'm going too fast. I'm trying to get to the my personal work. So while I am working on other things, I conducted this project with my students during the pandemic called the Corona Collective. And I began, basically I had a lot of classes that suddenly were online, and I'm sure you all are all familiar with that. But I decided to utilize my production skills from the Met and decided to be a creative director for all of the photographers I was teaching. And in that, we worked together as a team to create the Corona Collective, which each photographer was able to photograph in the way that they wanted to, but it had to be accompanied by audio interviews that were housed on StoryCorps' online archive. So in order to just really give a good example, keep up morale, I contributed myself. So if you'd like to go see this work, it's actually online as thecoronacollective.com, and we have an Instagram as well. And I'm really proud of the work that was done with the students. But my audio interviews for most of my projects are housed on the StoryCorps archive. Hopefully you're all familiar with the NPR program called StoryCorps, but they opened it up to the public to create audio interviews and oral histories and then house them on their online archive. And they are then forwarded to the Library of Congress, the US Library of Congress. Now, this is a really important factor to all of my work, including the cyanotypes for crossing over immigration stories. Because of this element, it really creates a lot of validity to a lot of the projects because they are housed with the Library of Congress. They are there forevermore. And so I incorporated them with several of my own personal bodies of work. Before I talk about the other bodies of work, I do want to talk about a body of work that basically really pushed me forward into the artistic realm and exhibition and in like many multimedia ways. It was something that I did while I was at the Met. During my time at the Met, I was basically charged with imaging that was on all of our online features. And at the invention of Instagram, I took on charging myself with a personal project to really put Instagram through its paces. And when I say that, I mean like digitally, like experimenting with the compression and the upload and the spitting out of a digital file. The initial series called Subway series was basically meaning like a series of 5 criteria. One, I had to photograph it on an iPhone 4, which was a limit in digital technology. It's beneath me. It was at the time, all of that stuff. And then to put it on Instagram, I was poo-pooing it at the time. And then I always had to photograph on the subway every single day and publish the work every single day as like a daily journal. Little did I know that I would get completely consumed with Instagram and that it had this really vibrant photographic community of which I read like tendrils around the world. I met all of these people that were photographing underground transit systems at the same time, and we were communicating with each other. But in the end, this body of work was, I fundraised to be able to publish the first Subway series in a self-published book. The biggest that each one of these files could be printed at was 6 by 6 inches, or else it would begin to fall apart digitally. So the book itself was printed with over 100 images that were published every single day. And if you remember back in the day, Instagram, it basically wouldn't let you edit the caption. So the caption itself was hammered in and was put in the book exactly with all the typos and all the mistypings and everything. So this book was printed in 250 copies, all 250 copies sold. So it's out of print. If anyone's interested in printing a second edition, I'm all for it. But this is what some of the images look like from the book. So fast forward to me really loving photographing inside of the subway and getting a better advanced phone because they were every time they were newer, the cameras got better to a certain point, and Instagram got better. They didn't need to compress the files 3 times. They had larger servers and they were allowing for less compression. And so now we're moving on to Subway Series 2. I have 7 volumes. And these files are really beautiful. And as like an antithesis to the book itself, I was able to print these as mural sized prints. And so I began to make them into silk screens on plexi, prints, dye sub on aluminum, and then digital C prints. And they were all exhibited in many different exhibitions at the Free Library in Philadelphia, down at the University of Texas. And it's kind of a cool multimedia experience because I also was playing with the compression of the initial Instagram videos that used to be square, and they were overly compressed. They were so fun to play with. So this is what this is kind of looking like. And as you can see, I'm thinking in terms of series and in multiples, and always wanting to accumulate in sort of like a qualitative way. So the qualitative way of the Subway series is just a demonstration of like the daily quotidian of New York City life. I always found living in New York City to be a lot more humbling and loving and supportive than the rest of the world seems to make New York City be. So I really felt like this is a touching book. And then the following series were printed in zines, like in limited editions like this. And they were just really beautiful as prints. So moving on, I was awarded a residency down on the border of Mexico right after Trump was elected. And it was just as he was changing immigration policy. So while I was down in Mission, Texas on my residency, I was trying to figure out how I could do a documentary on immigration as policies were beginning to change, especially at this border that was right next to Mission, Texas. And it was McAllen, Texas. And because I didn't have a digital darkroom or a film darkroom, I had to figure out how I could make a body of work. And I felt like the coincidence of using a cyanotype, this is a large format cyanotype textile. It's 5 by 7 feet. And I thought that there were two things that it could accomplish. One, create a portrait that is anonymous. And two, it would allow me to be able to process anywhere, because if anyone knows anything about cyanotype, all it takes is the sun to expose it and water to develop it. And so I began my project, Crossing Over Immigration Stories. So one thing that's really important for everybody to know is I'm a descendant of Italian immigrants. My family immigrated to the United States in the early 1900s. So I felt very confused. I saw it as an affront that Trump was changing the immigration policy and being so stringent about it. But I also really was grappling with having discussions with my family about immigration, because I am a second generation American Italian. And so that's not a lot of space, but there is definitely a shift in feeling about immigration. So I'm trying to create artwork that allows for a less confrontational conversation with my family, with my community, and with the world at large. And that's essentially what I accomplished. This has been seen all over the world, but most specifically by 50,000 people at the Biennale in Venice in 2019. So here's what some of that work looks like with some of the people that participated. This is in Venice. And here's some of what happens is that I do a portrait with a person where they lay on this textile with objects that are meaningful to them. And then I conduct an interview with them. And we talk about just about anything, but sometimes and mostly we talk about their crossing over and immigrating into either the United States or Europe. So just to fast forward a little bit, I went and visited my family in Italy in 2018, and they said, "Hey, I love your work. We're following what you're doing on the border of Mexico and in Mexico, but did you realize that we actually have a similar immigration situation in Italy? Why don't you come and work here on it?" And I did. I was like thinking like, wow, my family needed to move away from Italy, but all these people are dying to live in Italy. So I thought it would be a really interesting complement to the stories from immigration into the United States, and it was. So you'll see that there's several, at this point, I have 49 cyanotyped portraits conducted with interviews of 56 people. I just finished a residency in Malta where several people are immigrating through Malta. And so there's a combination of portraits from both places. So they're intermingled, and some are anonymous and some are not. But you're all welcome to check out the online recordings. I'll put the link to them in the chat if you'd like to look at them. But let's just have a look at some of the work some more. So this is at the Heilbrunn project in Philadelphia. This was back in 2018. This is in Venice along the canal in Giardini. That was during the pandemic in 2020. Same here. This is the Biennale in 2019. Biennale, more from the Venice Biennale. This is in Mexico, at Guapamacatero, which is a residency that I had within Mexico, but we had an outdoor exhibition, which was really quite beautiful, where the town came through and saw the pieces just hanging in nature. This is Governor's Island. And so these are some of the pieces as in reproduction photography of the pieces. And so in doing this project with Crossing Over Immigration Stories, I was awarded a residency at the Mural Arts Tacony Arts Lab in Philadelphia, and I was able to do an oral history of the Tacony neighborhood, and the resulting cyanotypes are just as beautiful as the Crossing Over Immigration Stories. They're also 5 by 7 and executed in the same way, except for they were done either on the sidewalk, on the street in Philadelphia, or in the backyard in Philadelphia. So this is outside of Milan. This is in Mexico as well. Here's how I document the pieces. Here is, this is actually on an asylum seeker camp in Calabria. And a really wonderful interview. Lamin Tamvin, his interview is really strong, and Mustafa in Calabria as well. this is the process of what happens after you expose someone on the cyanotype to the sun, and then you have to wash it with water. And on the right, what you'll see is me coding a flag for my next project, which I'm continuing currently. And this piece that I'm working on here was hanging at the Halai project in this recent show over in September. So just some images from the catalog at the Venice Biennale, some write-ups on the work inside of the catalog itself, the mission statement. And then this is me recording with Yarida Dorishi. She was helping me with the immigrants outside of Milan. I wanted to talk to you briefly about this project that I created during the pandemic. It's called I'm Sorry, I Love You, Thank You. It's a series, no surprise, of which I photograph portraits, very simple portraits, as I ask people to repeat the phrase. They're surprised, they don't know the phrase, but they repeat each phrase as I photograph them, just to see how their facial expression changes from one to the next. Again, it's a series that I intend to make upwards of 100, but this piece is hanging at the New Jersey State Museum currently. These are shot on black and white film and printed on fiber paper. And it's actually these 9 images are hanging at the museum. It's I'm sorry, I love you, thank you. And it's essentially like, you know, a response to this reflection of being alone during the pandemic. And there are a lot of weeks, days, sometimes weeks and days that I would not actually speak out loud because I live alone. And so when I saw my friends, when I could hug them, I just sort of felt like this is a really meaningful few things that we rarely say to each other. So back to the piece that was of me coding the American flag. So this is a body of work that the missions, the statement for it changes frequently, but I think that it can be summarized in that I'm grappling with basically my cultural upbringing as an Italian American, and watching as my community responded during George Floyd protests, especially down here in Philadelphia. I'm actually in Philadelphia tonight. And so Philly is where I was born. And it was really, really heart-wrenching to watch my community reject protests in the city. And so these are in response to this kind of struggling with this like conservatism. And it spans not only from these are 9mm bullets in place of the stars. 9mm bullets and 9mm guns are what police hold and contribute to the senseless killing of African Americans across the United States. As we all have witnessed, the affront to protesters for the George Floyd protests. Some of them had AR-15s, and so this is in response to that. Less of an affront is this piece where I was curious to see what the imprint of the Italian flag on cyanotype chemistry on top, coded onto an American flag, would be. If anyone out there understands filtration of light and spectrums of color, this was just the direct imprint of the Italian flag on top of the upside down Italian flag. And then this crocheted blanket was crocheted by my grandmother, who passed away many, many years ago, who's from Italy. Then moving on to yet another imposition of getting pregnant as an Italian daughter. It was always something that was, we're sort of talked about incessantly until more recent years because I'm older now. But these are 37 pregnancy sticks, 36 of them to represent the 3 years that my ex-husband and I tried to get pregnant, and 37 for the month that he left me. Sorry to get personal, you guys. But then, So that body of work is continuing. It's below the blue sky, and I hope you'll go see it. It's definitely being exhibited in a few places. And then I know I'm up on time, but I just wanted to show you some of the photographs from Malta. I was on a residency with Spazju Kreattiv. It's a beautiful and wonderful arts organization in Malta, but Malta is located southwest of Sicily. It's its own country, and it's one of the ports that asylum seekers and refugees are taken to when they cross over from Libya. So they're either taken to Malta, Lampedusa, or Sicily. So I went to Malta to work with asylum seekers. By the time I left, I was almost going to get to speak to them, but I mostly spoke to descendants of immigrants, descendants of asylum seekers, and immigrants themselves, because it turns out Malta is full of people migrating. So here's some photographs of the work that I did there, and of some of the people that were part of the project, and as they were making the cyanotype. So this is an exposure of the cyanotype. I had to work on location frequently. I had a studio at one of the colleges. I did whatever I could and traveled all over Malta. I called it the bus stop tan tour of Malta, because I waited for buses and got tan for 20 minutes every, look at me, I'm flush, So I had a studio that had a rooftop setting where I could also expose. This is one of the college classes, some of the participants with their work, what the cyanotype looks like once they hop off after it was exposed. I do a combination of moving people around on the cyanotype during the exposure. I have a couple of tricks that I've learned over the years to create more texture and more vibrancy. And that's basically it. Thank you so much. I can't believe I finished. Thank you. Hey, I'll stop my share. Yay. Woo, look at me, I'm all flush.
You fit a lot in. You did good.
Yeah, they're really good.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, we have about 15 minutes left for Q&A, and it looks like you guys did not follow my directions and leave comments in the chat box like you normally do. So we'll get some off the cuff or more direct comments. But if anyone at home wants to type a question for either Jackie or Mel, or maybe to the both of them.
We had, some compliments, yeah.
Yeah. Or if anyone here in the audience has any questions.
Yes, you have an audience.
So Mel, it looks like the two first images that you showed, were they in Vietnam?
Yeah. Yeah.
Is that when you were in service?
I was in the Air Force.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah.
I worked with Vietnamese refugees.
I'm sorry?
I worked with Vietnamese refugees.
Oh, great.
So I recognize.
One is the young boys are just street kids, and the other was the Saigon market.
Any other audience questions?
Oh, Jackie has a question. Oh, you do too.
Oh, I was just saying hi.
I have a question for Mel. Is there like any particular photograph, image, or area or time period that really resonates with you, a favorite?
I haven't thought about that for a long time, but certainly the courtroom, the Replevin hearing, with the couple with the crosses.
That was such a strong
that,
image.
That is
That's when the farm is being repossessed.
It's a Replevin hearing. One of their neighbors, actually throughout the Midwest in the late 80s, farmers were just going belly up like crazy in Iowa. And so they have this hearing, and it's called a Replevin hearing, and everybody thinks it's that they're going to take the farm away, but it really just allows them to move forward with the process. So these Replevin hearings, suddenly the farmers started showing up and in mass and holding these crosses up and it was really sort of not disruptive, but really powerful. It's just
Really heartbreaking.
yeah, it's really too bad.
That was a powerful image. Jackie, can we throw that question to you also?
Oh, we got to
I didn't hear
repeat
it.
the questions because they can't hear them, of course. Oh, it was.
Question.
Yeah, the last question was about a period that most interested you, that most you were attached to.
Photograph.
Yeah.
Photograph
Yep.
that
for a
most.
time
Oh
period.
my
Right. Yep.
God. Wow, that is a huge question. Wow. So, I mean, for me, everything changed once I started to teach history of photo. So I think that this is a two-part answer. One is that I'm really, 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 I'm really affected by Walker Evans, Robert Frank, August Sander. Mainly, not, I'm sure this comes as like zero surprise to you after seeing the work that I've done, but these are photographers that I was inspired by before I even began doing a lot of this work in series. But Robert Frank, Walker Evans, and August Sander all worked in these like overall themes showing humanity, and especially Walker Evans with his passengers, so I was really directly affected and inspired by Passengers by Walker Evans. But when it comes to historical processes, obviously Anna Atkins is the first female photographer that used cyanotype. My interest in historical processes, it's not isolated to one period of time. But if I were to pick a time, Julia Margaret Cameron and Anna Atkins, like the golden age of photography, basically 1850s to 1880s. But the thing is like, I'm not aiming to look anything like the work. It's just that I feel like the fluidity of the invention of photography and playing around with chemistry really gives me a lot of permission to do what I want with historical processes. When I came into photography, it was all traditional and it was all very regimented and very strict. You wouldn't even get an assistant job if you didn't really understand every single technical component of it scientifically. And so when I work on my personal projects, I'm pushing against all of that formal training. But when I'm working commercially, I follow it verbatim. So, I hope that answers it, and it's not too much, but that's it.
There were a couple questions that came in for you, Jackie. Have you noticed any fading when you exhibit the cyanotypes outdoors in the sun?
So I saw that in the chat. Guess what? It actually gets darker in the sun. You never would expect it because this is, I was talking to Nora Kennedy, who's the head conservator at the photo conservation at the Met, and we were talking about how cyanotypes are sort of a little bit alive, meaning like when you store them, they change in color, and when you bring them out, they change in color. It's very slight, but it actually will get darker when you bring it out into sunlight. But it won't get like so dark that your exposure is gone.
And what is the next project you are planning to work on?
So the next project that I'm working on is Bullet the Blue Sky. So all three of those bodies of work are still active. Crossing over, literally one of these 7 cyanotypes were made 3 weeks ago. And in fact, I can smell the chemistry still on them. They're still kind of damp they got Malta water on them. The Bullet the Blue Sky is still in process. I'm about to make another one. And then I'm sorry, I love you, thank you. That is an ongoing project as well. But I'm just kind of waiting until it's the summer so that my studio can have natural light in the best position.
Can we ask Mel the same
Yeah,
question? Do you
let's
have
do that.
a next project that you're going to be working on or a next series of images? It's interesting that both, actually, I've been noticing that, like Jackie, your professional work has influenced you to work in series, and maybe for you as a photojournalist, that has influenced you to just work in single images. So I don't know if you have a specific project or a theme that you're working on coming up or currently.
I don't. I keep trying to think. I saw someone who painted their car, hand painted their car, and it was really just like out there. And then they had the woman had all her friends sign the car in the interior and stuff and so I said, well, that's really interesting. She says, that was my COVID project. And I sort of went on my way, and made the thought of making a photograph, a portrait of the woman with the car, and then afterwards I got to thinking, it made me think of Close Encounters, where Dreyfus made the monument in his kitchen sink, he just went, and I was thinking.
Started with mashed potatoes and went to a model,
And
yes.
I got to thinking, I wonder if someone built the Titanic in their backyard during COVID, and so it's kind of been on my mind, and I haven't really gone past that first person, but it just seems like, and Jackie was talking about photographers that influence her. I'm a real fan of Philippe Halsman. I just think that he's got this light. I mean, there's some baggage with his history and things like that, but his photographs always have this sort of levity to them, and it's just, when you work as a journalist for a long period of time, there's a lot of darkness to what you do for a living. And so it's really nice to see somebody that just works in this really light way. And the photographs are amazing, but they really always have this little flip to them, So as far as the project, I'd like to try to think of a way, to find people that have made something that's, that's visible, that's out of the ordinary, and they did it because they had all this time for 2 years.
Say, Chris, your backyard, right?
That's a good idea.
Right there, we found him for you.
You mentioned someone who maybe wanted to build a
Was this a
Titanic in the
COVID
backyard.
project?
Well, if it's even close.
What was the project?
It's just a whole backyard project. The last thing was a punch bowl, pizza oven.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. There were lots of projects in backyards that had to do with being a little more self-entertaining, self-sustaining, yeah. Yep.
Yeah, awesome.
Well, I'm going to throw it out there. It's a lot of years of experienced photographers right now that we have on the panel, and maybe one of the last questions, or one of the last questions I want to ask is if you want to give any advice to any up-and-coming photographers, regardless of what medium, what they're doing, what would it be?
That's a good question.
I'll let Mel take that.
Jackie, you want to take that?
It's difficult because we're saturated with photographers right now out in the world. So this is a really difficult question to answer. That being said, if I'm going to speak to the photographic public in this, I don't know who's here right now, but if you really, really are in love with photography, plan for the long haul and don't limit yourself to what you enjoy just now, because how you appreciate and use photography will change. There's no doubt in my mind. I mean, it's so drastically different from the moment I graduated in 1994 to now. And in order to maintain my love for it and be immersed in it, I just had to allow myself to ride the wave and remember what interests me and what I like about it. So I find that teaching photography, many students are trying to appease a certain kind of public. And I really enjoy that I'm charged with making sure that they're always self-reflecting and checking in to make sure it's what they desire, what they want to express.
I think it just made me think, I've met photographers before who say they never look at any other photographer's work. And it just always struck me as kind of odd. And I would look at photographers' work all day long if I could, I just think that seeing how people, especially now, like Jackie said, there are an awful lot of photographers. If you can have an idea of what meat and potatoes are done day in and day out, and then decide what you want to do. And so if you're a working photographer and you pay the bills with photography, you do that, but you try to find something that's for you, you know? And I think that's what in the end becomes what you're known for and what you know what I mean? The other stuff goes by so quick. When you do something that you really love, and it's going to be different, it's going to be for you, I think that's what people recognize and remember about a photographer.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
Great answers. Great answers.
They're all correct.
Yeah, they're all correct. They're all.
All right.
Where do you go from here, Heather?
I don't want to say goodbye. Let's just keep doing this all night.
Well, before people have to leave, we should say a little goodbye.
We should. Well, thank you so much to both Jackie and Mel. It was a pleasure to have you both. Your work is inspiring and fantastic. So thank you so much for being here with us tonight.
Yes,
Thank you.
And then, of course, thank you to all of the guests who are here in person and online, many of which have been with us month after month after month for all of these years. We're really going to miss you guys, so definitely stay in touch with the three of us here behind the scenes on Instagram or email or text messages or whatever. We're going to miss you guys.
We are tremendously.
Yes, and thank you, Heather and Habib.
Congratulations, you guys. This is huge. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you all, and all you attended, and thank you to our guests. So, good night, everyone. Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
But actually, Mel wanted to
Go ahead.
add something.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, I just want to just say that I'm a member of a group of black and white practitioners, and the group is the Monologue Collective, and it's a monologue like a mashup of monochrome and analog, which is with an A, and everybody practices a historic process. So it's a small group, or like 12 of us, or 10 of us, and but it's really a great group, and we're always interested in meeting other photographers who practice black and white in film.
Add the webpage into the chat box.
Oh, yeah.
Because we have a lot of photographers in the group now.
Yeah, so it's just, I don't have the web page, but
Or you can type the name of the
Right
group in.
Yes, we'll add that to the.
I think I have it. I can get it up. I was just
Yeah.
on there.
But I'll just
Thanks,
say
Jackie.
goodbye. Thanks, everyone, and we'll see you
To
in our
everyone.
next thing.
Yes, our next collaboration.